Grüß, willkommen in einem Video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 22 of my figure gaming video series. In this video, I'll be covering how to make flexible rivers and roads. While I've adequately resolved how to create built-up areas, hills and woods a long time ago, I always had difficulty with rivers and roads. Most of my terrain uses embedded rivers and roads, and while this looks good, it lacks flexibility. All my previous attempts at creating roads and rivers were not satisfactory, that is, flexible roads and rivers, with the best being simple pieces of felt. Now I've worked out a way to create rivers and roads which will stick to my playing area firmly as well as being flat and seamless as possible, although they still do not look as good as this diorama or even my embedded rivers and roads. At least they are flexible. My earliest, most successful attempt at creating flexible rivers looked like this. It worked well, but I never liked the look of it, and you can see the edges sort of lift a bit, which kind of destroys the diorama feel to it. After the felt, I then decided to move to something that looked, which I thought was a little bit better. In this case, as you can see here, the base is felt, the top is glossy and flat, as well as allowing me to add some paint on details. It is thick, which is the thickness of the felt and also the cardboard that it's made up of, but otherwise is very practical and looks reasonably good. Embedded rivers will always look better, but this gives me the flexibility to place a river on a flank to match scenarios I happen to be playing without needing to make custom playing areas. Let's start with what you need to make these type of rivers. First, you need a piece of felt. This is an A4 size piece of olive green felt from a haberdashery. You can use any size, but I find the optimum road or river length is 30 centimeters or 1 foot. An A4 size is very close to this. Now you need some thick paper. This is a sheet of thin cardboard, but 200 GSM white paper is acceptable as well. The colour is not important as you'll be painting the resulting sheet, any colour you desire. But before I worked this out, I decided to use brown for road and blue for river cardboard. You'll now need an appropriate colour acrylic indoor paint. In this case, I have 2 shades of soil for my roads, and I use a blue for rivers or lakes. Now apply PVC glue to the cardboard or thick paper. Make sure it's thick and covers the whole surface. It's important this sticks to the felt securely. If there is a problem with the gluing, you'll need to do spot repairs to your roads or rivers. It's not a big issue, but adds to the work considerably, so let's try and avoid it. Now you place the felt on top of the paper. If you're using a large felt sheet, then you'd glue the felt and put the paper on it. In many ways, this could be a better approach as you can make sure the felt gets a nice thick layer of glue, but I've done it both ways and it works in either case, so it's whatever the preference is for the player. Now I place the paper and felt on a surface which will not stick to the glue. In my case, it's some sheets of plastic covered painting guides. Just make sure whatever you place it on top of will not glue itself to the edges of your terrain piece. I also do the same with the top of my felt as well. This is very important as there will be a lot of glue coming out of the edges and you need to make sure this does not glue itself to anything. I now place a flat piece of wood on top of the whole thing and place a weight on it. It's important the felt firmly glues to the paper tightly. It's now also very important to leave this for 24 hours, if not longer. The glue has to pretty much fully dry before you go to the painting stage. 24 hours later, and as you can see here, the glue is not fully dry, as you can see by the white glue on the edges. I had to continue to allow this to dry. Once it's dried, you can always tell this because the glue goes from a white to a clear, cut the felt out from the cardboard. In this case, the paper is still wet. You'll need to ensure it's fully dry before you apply the paint, so I allowed it to dry. Once it's sufficiently dry, you can now paint the cardboard. In this case, you can still see the ridges, but they do eventually disappear once you painted it. This shows the cardboard painted, in this case road brown. I always do 2 coats and trying to make sure each coat is as thick as possible. The thicker the paint, the more ridged the terrain will unfortunately become. It normally does dry out and flatten out. When doing rivers, I normally do one coat of blue and a second coat of clear wood varnish. I use a water-soluble wood varnish as it makes it easier to clean the paintbrushes, but you could use a non-water-soluble varnish if you wish, and that actually gives you a bit more of a glossy effect anyway. After getting 2 coats of paint and being allowed to fully dry, we are now ready to put the roads in. If there is a large amount of buckling in the cardboard, it would be best to place the cardboard between 2 books, place a weight on it for a day. In this case, there was some buckling and I had to flatten it out with heavy books. You can freeform the roads and rivers, but I typically create templates from thick cardboard. One template starts and ends at the same horizontal position or location, but curves the terrain width. This is the thick template which I use for rivers. The other is offset, which is the thin template. I use this for roads and streams. Players can create whatever template they wish for roads or streams or water features. This is using the offset road template. I can get 11 road strips in this case, which provides me with 11 feet of road. The thickness of these roads is 1.5 centimetres, which may be a bit wide for 6mm. I normally use 1 centimetre wide roads for 6mm, but I've found if the roads are too narrow, they can warp. This could be because my paper or cardboard is too thin, but 1.5 centimetre wide roads work very well. I also use this thickness for streams. In order to cut them out, I use very large dressmaker's scissors. The larger the better, and also the larger and sharper the better, as you'll need to make nice, clean and curved cuts. The first road is cut. This uses white paper and you can just see bits of white on the edges. This is the main reason why I used brown cardboard, as it eliminates these bits of white. The resulting road has the feeling of latex. It stays flat but will curve when picked up from an edge. I've found with lakes, which are only 6 to 8 centimetres long, so you can get some warping. With a length of 30 centimetres, you will never get warping on your playing area if you're deploying things like roads and rivers. Well, slightly out of focus, this shows the bottom of the road, which shows the felt. Felt allows for the road to stick to a flocked playing area or to a felt playing area. It's not good for a gaming mat, so it will slip too easy. You may have to consider thin strips of rubber perhaps instead of felt. This shows the final result, 11 feet of roads. If using a 3x4 foot playing area, this allows you to have a centre road of 4 feet and 2 half roads which will join in the centre, taking up an extra 6 feet, leaving you with a spare road segment. This is a typical road network. A larger playing area will need more. This shows a playing area, and it's a bit deceptive, but it's resting against a wall. You will see in the top left corner the road terrain pieces. These are almost at 90 degrees and still stay firmly on the flock playing area. You can also see the embedded roads, which are thinner and slightly lighter, but otherwise match the road terrain pieces I've created. In case you thought I was providing an optical illusion, this shows a close-up of the road segments stuck to the felt almost at a 90-degree angle on the playing area, which is leaning against the road. To the right, you'll see a door. When you do look closely at the terrain pieces, you'll see it's not flush. This is still on its side, and the terrain does sit better when the playing area is down flat on the ground, but nonetheless, you're always going to get a lip of some description. This shows a river using the same mechanism I created the road on the same playing area. In this case, the rivers are 3 centimetre wide, and I've attempted to do a 2-tone effect on them. This shows a close-up of the river. I've attempted to paint more than one tone to the terrain. Unfortunately, it did not really work very well, in my opinion anyway. I think the light-coloured blue was a little bit too light-coloured. I should have done a dark colour blue, and then the blue that you see mainly on the river should have been the tones. As you're dealing with a paintable surface, you can try all sorts of different multi-tones to give you a better effect, but some experimentation will be required. The river consists of 1 coat of paint and a coat of water-based wooden floor varnish, applied thickly, shown on the left as an example. You can also use woodland realistic water, shown on the right, which can be used to give you a shiny water effect on your river. This shows the terrain pieces on a playing area. The river is at the bottom and the road at the top. As comparison, you can see the embedded roads to your right. When I look at this image again, you can see that my two-tone effect on the river didn't really work very well, and I really did have to rethink how I would do this in the future. The same could apply with the roads. You could try a little bit of a pattern in there, maybe slightly different colours, brown to indicate dry dirt, wet dirt, etc. You can do whatever you want. Because you're dealing with a painted surface, you have a significantly more flexibility in how you want to approach it. I do have to admit the joins between river pieces is a bit annoying, but I have to store this in a container which can only accommodate 30 centimetre lengths. Because I cannot fold or roll these terrain pieces, the length is determined by your storage solution. While less noticeable, the joins on the roads are also annoying. I'm uncertain how to really resolve this, or if it's even possible. You'll notice some of the marks used to determine where to cut is visible. Players could paint the road segments once cut out if you wish to remove these. I also suspect adding to any two-tone effect is best done after the roads are cut out, not before. This shows a T intersection. You can change the angle the road travels by cutting the ends to whatever angle you wish. Currently I do not do this, as it's only useful for T intersections or a star intersection. You know, if I start cutting in angles, it starts limiting my road segments, and I have to create even more road segments. I also use this system for water features. These water features are linear size, which works for hills and swamps, but doesn't kind of work as well with water features, and quite frankly doesn't particularly look very good. Units do not need to occupy this terrain, so there is no reason to accommodate elements. In the future I will make an attempt to create more natural lakes or water features. And so we come to an end of episode 22 of my figure gaming hobby series of videos, in this case creating rivers and road terrain. I have to admit that while I did go through the process of creating all these terrain pieces, and I did use it for a few games, I very rarely use it. So I don't know if it's considered a success or a failure. It's good that I have it in my gaming bag if I ever need to create flexible terrain, but currently most of my playing compatriots prefer my big playing areas with embedded roads and rivers. So maybe it's not so successful. I'll leave it up to players to decide. Denken Sie daran, immer für Hilfe, zu kämpfen.